but it's that scornful one where I understood as a sports fan, I love watching my team's rivals lose. And so I will hate watch the Packers. I will hate watch the SEC because I can't stand none of them. And so I love and revel in their failures. When I watch Alabama lose a football game, it brings me joy. When Aaron Rodgers throws an interception, I go and grab a celebratory beer. Like, now I understand what hate watching truly is. Hello, and welcome to the Cup of Tea Critiques podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Chasen, and like always, I'll be joined today by the team that brings you cupofteacritiques.com. Here, we'll dive deep into the productions and topics we broach on our website so you can decide for yourself if they're your cup of tea. Ready for a deep look with a deep brew? This week's topic, the joy of hate watching. Cup of Tea Critiques is a family affair, and I'm here with my brother Chris, my mother Reba, and my father Terry. And I'm going to start kicking this to my brother. Bro, you and I, on several occasions, have had conversations about our parents because, you know, mom and dad will keep watching these television shows knowing dang well they're not enjoying themselves. They tell us about it all the time. And ironically, recently you brought up this term. There's actually a term for this behavior. So why don't you go ahead and share it with our audience and help us define what it is mom and dad are doing?
They're hate watching. Hate watching is a term. I think it became popular, I would say, about 12, 13 years ago. And it's just when you're consuming media specifically to mock or criticize it. So I think there are shows where people either it becomes just part of their routine or it evokes some kind of strong emotion in them, or a long-running show that maybe got off the rails. There's all these different kinds of reasons like people might be watching something. Maybe they just want to needle somebody that maybe they want to ruin it for somebody who's enjoying it. Maybe they're just trolling, So there's a lot of different reasons people hate watch, but it's just watching something is not any good at all.
Okay, so mom and dad, I think I can sum this up in one letter. Why? Why do you do this to yourselves?
Don't know, to tell you the truth, why we stuck with some shows the way we did. And the thing is, directly to the definition of it, afterwards we would talk about how bad it was and talk about the various parts of it and how bad it was. And that was Blue Bloods, to call it out, that we watched way too long.
There's gonna be more crap to take, but it'll get easier.
Yeah, eventually.
How'd you guys deal with it?
Well, in Jamie's case, he would just call his older brother Danny to the rescue.
I mean, you'd be 1063.
You do the only thing you can do, ignore the BS.
Yeah, I got it when Pop was PC. We all have. Your dad. All of us had to prove we weren't born with shields and stripes.
And The Equalizer started to do that. Both of those shows started out, okay, Blue Bloods was marginal, but The Equalizer, we sort of enjoyed it at the beginning. We liked the character, Queen Latifah playing that lead role. But as the show went on, it just got worse in terms of how just far-fetched her performing the stunts were, and on and on and on.
Dante disobeys Watkins. That's his career. I'm not gonna let that happen.
Especially since Grail might not even be there.
What do you mean?
Well, he wasn't there at the attack on the transport, right? What if he decided to run this heist the same way?
Dante goes down there, takes down the crew. Grail still goes free.
And Dante loses his job. But nothing. We have to fix this. I owe him.
But we watched it for 2 seasons, maybe 2.5, before we started to bail. Blue Bloods, we watched too many seasons. A minimum of 5. And I have no clue why we lasted that long.
Your dad said it all.
Because Reagan
Your dad
doesn't
said
quit.
It all.
Yeah, right.
Your dad said it all, and you all have, I think, properly diagnosed us as hate watchers.
Yeah.
That's
Guilty.
something yes, we're guilty of for sure.
Now, Chris, you and I are fortunate. Our parents' bond is extremely strong, but now we've learned that bond got strong by a mutual glutton for punishment that is hate watching. However, they did kind of stumble upon, right? They did happen to stumble upon the fact that there are multiple flavors of this self-punishment. So can you kind of help take us through the different, Baskin Robbins 31 flavors of hate watching that there are?
Well, we've broken this down in about 3 different ways. So we determined that Mom and Dad were watching Blue Bloods and The Equalizer as a form of routine-based hate watching. You start watching a show, and you just get used to watching it, and it goes down and down and down in quality, but you're now in this habit of watching it, and so you just kind of keep watching it as a form of comfort. So that's the first one, routine-based, probably the most common, right? The second one is maybe the most melancholy, is just a regretful hate watch, where you are watching something wishing that it can go back to being the best version of itself. The most common example of this, maybe it's a little mixed with routine, is Girls. It's a show on HBO called Girls that everybody really liked when it first came out. Just slowly started to have real disdain for the main characters as they became off-putting on screen. They became off-putting off screen. And the show just started to kind of dive bomb it, but people just kept watching it. And it was really just people, I think, wanted it to be as good as that first season was. And so there was a little melancholy, oh, damn, I wish this show had stayed on the track it was on.
So this guy's making me bananas.
I've never experienced anything like it. The thing is, I have absolutely no sense of how he really feels about me, because when we are together, he's so there and he's so present. And then he disappears for 2 weeks and doesn't answer any text messages, and I feel as though I invented him.
Did you invent him?
If I'd invented him, then I wouldn't have a giant bruise on my ass.
And then the last one is just the pettiest one, is just scornful hate watching. Just watching something, knowing it's not any good, and being glad that it's not good, and frankly reveling in the disappointment of other people who like it.
Okay, and it's with that last one, because I have to admit, for myself, I could not understand this phenomenon. Like, I can't watch something that I hate. If it's something that's going to waste my time, I just don't feel like I can throw myself into it. Or so I thought. And I legitimately tried to understand this phenomenon. I went through my entire list on all the different kind of streaming services, Netflix, Hulu, etc. And then I finally went through my YouTube TV list. And as I went down the list, I realized there are a lot of shows on there that I have recordings simply because I'm a giant sports fan. But it's that scornful one where I understood, as a sports fan, I love watching my team's rivals lose. And so I will hate watch the Packers. I will hate watch the SEC, because I can't stand none of them. And so I love and revel in their failures. When I watch Alabama lose a football game, it brings me joy. When Aaron Rodgers throws an interception, I go and grab a celebratory beer. Like, now I understand what hate watching truly is. Because once you can define it like that and help me understand there's a category for me too, that there's that scornful category, I now understand this, and I'm a proud hate watcher.
Yeah, well, to piggyback off of that, and I think there is a distinction between disliking and hating, and the article I was just looking at kind of talked about how if you dislike something, a show, you're probably just not going to watch it. But the hate watching, it appeals to an emotion that people want to have, Like we think we want to be happy, but like we want to feel certain emotions like anger, like people want to feel that. So it had a link to some research thing, and it's it only showed me like kind of the summary of it, but basically that the people who are happy across different cultures are people who feel those emotions. So it's not always elation. Sometimes it is something like a negative emotion, but they just feel it more strongly. Those people tend to be happier. Your
dad and I began watching Blue Bloods because Tom Selleck was in it. And we were big fans of Magnum P.I., the original Magnum P.I. It was a very, very good show. And so when Blue Bloods came along starring Tom Selleck, we just wanted it to be good and we wanted it to be successful. And it just turned out to not be. So we were just, incredibly disappointed with it. And we hung in there for years, and we couldn't get it there. We couldn't get it there. The reason we hung in there is because it's not just that it was routine based, but it was also because we just wanted to grab Tom Selleck by the lapels and say, please be like Magnum, please be like Magnum.
A little bit.
So I think that's why, that's to your point, there was an emotional element there. It wasn't strictly routine based.
Yeah.
And then also a couple of reality shows that I used to watch when I was at Michigan. Myself and my roommate freshman year, Carlos, we watched Rock of Love and Pickup Artists, which were on MTV. And so I think, I think that goes to bonding over hate watching, kind of like the community based hate watching, which is, kind of in a couple of the articles I looked at. Part of the reason I was watching these was my roommate was watching them, and then so that was, and obviously I'm away at college, so it's like you just start bonding with people over whatever the shows are, good or bad.
I remember years ago we put a movie on one night that we had rented from Blockbuster or whomever it was. And it was just it was a Western or something. It was so bad. We all tried to get through it. It started out with a bank robbery or something.
You're talking about bandits. You're talking about bandits.
That's it.
It wasn't a Western though. It wasn't a
Western. But we wanted to throw it towards the West because it was that bad.
It
was terrible.
Kate,
I'm a desperate man.
Desperate?
Yes.
You don't know the meaning of the word. Desperate is when you wake up in the morning and you wish you hadn't. It's knowing that every time you get behind the wheel of a car, you're only a tree away from ending the empty charade that your life has become. So don't talk to me about desperate.
It was just so bad. We tried to get through it and we just couldn't.
I got to a point where I was like, what is this even about? Like, I think we were all just like, what are we even watching?
I don't remember who the first person was that quit, but I remember
it was mom and dad both went upstairs, and you and I tried to make it through. And I specifically remember because I think you were in the recliner and I was like on the ground or something like that. And I just remember you getting up because you were like, draped up. You had like a blanket over you or something like that. You got up and you walked over to the DVD box and just like looking really hard for the runtime. Because I think we were all under the impression that it was like an hour and a half movie. And it turned out it was way longer than that.
Yeah, 2 hours and 3 minutes.
Yeah, and so I just remember you getting up and going to look at the DVD box, and you were like, "Just turn it off when you're done." And you just went upstairs. Either went upstairs or downstairs. I don't remember, but like you were done not that long after mom and dad.
I gave up. I tried to get this. I mean,
but we got it thinking it would be good though. We were like, this looks like a good movie. I think Bruce Willis
had a lot of names on there that looked like it was supposed to be good.
Two bank robbers fall in love with the girl they've kidnapped.
Doesn't sound bad.
That's a better description than what it is. A trash-ass movie that spent too much time running.
Yeah, it didn't. I was like, it didn't sound that bad. And I think at the time, Bruce Willis was doing some good movies. So we were like,
Yeah.
you know,
This is Bruce Willis, Billy Bob Thornton, Kate
yeah,
Blanchett.
good cast.
It should have been good.
Did you ever wonder if these actors get into these things and when they're done, they're like, damn, if they don't just burn the film? Just evidence, though, that, doesn't matter who is acting in the film. Sometimes trash is just trash. And this is not to say that their acting was terrible. It was just a bad movie.
Yeah.
The script was boring. The scenes were repetitive. Like,
it's tough
there
to
was
call
no
that
intrigue, nothing.
It was tough to call that a hate watch, though, because I was, by the end, I
Yeah.
was just like kind of indifferent. Like, I was like, what do I got to do tomorrow? Like that's what my just started thinking about.
Yeah.
No, I agree. I can understand hate watching in the moment. We didn't get into it thinking that's what we were going to be doing, but in the middle of it, I did.
According to this, an element of hate watching is that the enjoyment of watching something bad can be a form of entertainment. It can be a source of shared amusement among friends or online communities. And we are kind of enjoying the experience of having watched something so bad.
I think hate watching does give you kind of it takes disappointment out of the equation, right? I think we go to most things expecting it to be good, or certainly hoping it's good, and we can feel really let down if it's bad, or if it's substandard for whoever's in it. I feel like it's also, though, like if you watch something, like this is gonna be garbage, and it ends up being decent, sometimes it's kind of disappointing in the opposite way, because you didn't get the satisfaction of seeing something that sucked. Does that make sense?
No, I hear you. I do.
Yeah,
you're
like, oh, that was better than I wanted it to be. Like, that was better than I thought it would be. Especially if it's like an actor, you can just take Jason Statham. Brandon went to see a Jason Statham movie after watching a trailer and being like, oh, this looks like garbage. I'm gonna go watch it with somebody who likes Jason Statham, and you're like, this is gonna be garbage. I'm gonna get the laugh in their face afterward, and then it turns out to be, either really good or like at least decent, and you're like, damn, like you didn't get that satisfaction out of. So you're still disappointed the same way you'd be if you went expecting a good movie and it was okay or bad.
Yeah, I guess I can understand that. And for what it's worth, I've saved myself that embarrassment by not catching any of his productions in theaters. But
so there's not any show that, like, say, has a big fan base or just a very dedicated fan base where you're like, that show's terrible and I'm gonna watch it just to like tear it down.
As a sports fan, I think most sports fans can relate to this, because how many times do you tune into your rivals' games to mock them for every mistake they make? I mean, as a Chicago Bears fan, any opportunity I got to see Aaron Rodgers throw an interception, I was happy, I was screaming. All I wanted to do was see him screw up. And yes, that followed him to the Jets. Okay, he may not have been with the Packers anymore, but anytime he screwballs it, I'm happy. Same thing with the Pistons. I don't care that we are 30, 40 years removed from the dang bad boys. When the Pistons suck, I'm a happy man. Okay, I just am. That's who I am. I don't care for the Red Wings. I don't cheer for LA or New York sports because I'm a Chicago man. I'd apologize, but I'm not sorry for being a Chicago man. Like, because of that, I can understand hate watching through that definition. Like, okay, and sports fans, I think, can relate to that.
Oh,
and I think a big part of, and I don't think this is just sports either. A lot of times we dislike something more strongly because of who likes it, right? Like, so honestly, I don't feel like the rivalry hate as strongly as I used to, other than Ohio State. Like, I don't hate the Knicks as much. I don't hate the Knicks as much as I did.
I'm sorry.
I don't hate the. No,
I'm sorry.
I don't hate the Knicks as much as I did, when I was younger. But when I see their fans at some of the home games, it kind of comes back where you just you want them to lose. You start rejoicing when they like in that last series when that game 1 choke job happen. Like I enjoyed it because it was at Madison Square Garden. If it was, if you weren't seeing the Knicks fans there or anything like that, I'd probably be like, oh dang, you might feel a little bad for them. But like watching the celebrity row and the fans and all that, you kind of like it just makes you. So I think that's I think part of, even with like shows, it's like part of the reason you don't like a show is because of the people who keep telling you it's amazing, and you're like, I don't trust your judgment. Like, so
yeah.
Sorry, I was laughing so hard because before Chris said, except Ohio State, my face was twitching because I wanted to say, have you not watched yourself around Thanksgiving? And seen how you react? Like, that's all I was about to say, and then you bailed yourself out by mentioning that.
I don't know if it falls under hate watching, but I'm sure I've told all of you this, that when I was younger, for whatever crazy sadistic reason or whatever you want to call it, I used to always root for, in rivalry games, I would always root for the away team because I always, for some reason, love seeing the fans look shell-shocked when their team lost.
That's how I feel every time I see Oklahoma, Florida, Georgia, Bama, Auburn, insert SEC school here. Anytime they lose, I am super happy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I'm like
especially
Stephen A. I'm like Stephen A. when the Cowboys lose.
Yeah, so as far as hate watching, like I think Ohio State's the main thing, and it does. That's where I do understand like the kind of emotion behind it, because I am specifically Ohio State home games, especially if they're prime time. You're just watching it. I don't think they've lost one in as long as I can remember. You're just watching it, hoping everything goes wrong and they lose in the most embarrassing way possible. But I watch all those games kind of expecting them to win. So I don't really have like a big letdown. Like it's just like and all I can really do is get the joy of seeing them lose when they're expected to win. So
the last primetime one you watched, and it may not be primetime like at night, but that would have been roughly 11 a.m. on November 30th.
That's why I said prime time, though.
It was a prime game for the most of the nation because they watched
here.
it. Look at the numbers. Everybody was watching.
That was hysterical. That was when he missed that second field goal. I was laughing so hard because you remember exactly what I'm talking about, right?
Oh yeah.
Michigan throws that second interception, and the fans are all into it and everything, and then they run it on first down.
Yeah.
And it gets stuffed, and the fans are immediately booing again.
It took one play for their fans to boo. They end up going 3 and out.
Second down play gets stuffed like a swing pass. Third play, they get stuffed on the run again, and they get booed again. So that's what's happened. That's why I was laughing so hard after the missed field goal, because it was just like it was just this like comedy of like, it wasn't even a comedy of errors really. They just got stuffed.
Ineptitude, comedy of ineptitude.
But also just like Gus just being like, and he hooked it. Wow.
Self-inflicted wounds. Mr. Gus Johnson on the call. Yep. No, I just knew. So when it comes to sports, the other thing with hate watching is that like I have my father's mouth when it comes to watching sports. Okay, for just Mom, I am very tame when you're around. That's how you know you raised a good son, because I really want to say a lot worse than what does fly out. However, and unfortunate because Belle is not a sports fan, but I have a feeling she may end up with a sports fan someday or whatever, and she'll be engaged because it's her partner and whatnot. And they're going to think that she's been a lifelong fan, and she's going to be like, no, I'm just regurgitating how my dad taught me to watch this. You know, and it'll be a sailor too. And even the sailor's going to be like, really? And again, this is how I understand. Now, this is how I understand hate watching. That's what I do.
Yep.
So in relation to 24, I don't think I ever hate watched it. What I hated was, so, and this is probably where hate watching comes into play, when themes become repetitive. For example, how many times can we hear CTU's been compromised?
Yeah.
What do you think? A helicopter and a backup team ready to leave here in 15 minutes. Are you out of your mind? You want to find this bomb? This is what it's gonna take. Killing a witness? That's the problem with people like you, George. You want results, but you never want to get your hands dirty. I'd start rolling up your sleeves.
Yeah.
I mean, after a while, you got like, damn, you're the counterterrorism unit, and y'all keep getting terrorized. Y'all must not be good at your job. There's always somebody inside screwing things up. So I got tired of hearing that. And as much as I enjoyed the character Jack Bauer, he was somewhat Arnold Schwarzenegger-like with his lines. For example, we don't have time. Like, that literally that could have been a ringtone on my phone for a text message or something coming through. Like, I could have assigned that to somebody or whatever. Just like, that would have been it. So I didn't hate the show. I don't think there was ever a time where I hated the show, but I did get sick of there always being the same kind of central theme in every season. It's like, y'all can do better. I've watched you do better. You can do better.
I'll mention one more. Honestly, I think for a lot of people, it's SNL.
That's a good point.
I think a lot of people, and I think it kind of falls into every category. Honestly, I think you could say it falls into all of these. Some people, you know, it's a Saturday night show. It's like an institution now. It's birthed so many great comedic, you know, talents.
It's Saturday Night Live.
So people are in the routine of watching it, you know, whether they think it's as good as it used to be or not. Regretful. I think some people like, you know, the way it used to be, or, you know, or they lament how comedy's changed, or they lament how the format of the show has changed, or you know, I like the older cast members better, or something like that. And scornful. Because I remember maybe a month or so ago, country singer Morgan Wallen was a musical guest, and he, at the end of the show, he walked off early. You know, they usually congratulate each other and hug and everything, and he kind of just walked off afterward. You know, and he wrote some caption on his Instagram like, "I was going back to God's country" or something like that. You know, and now he's selling T-shirts based on it. So he's appealing to people who view SNL as this like liberal bastion, and they hate it for that reason. And so I think there's a political element to SNL too, where people have decided to view it as this embodiment of liberalism. And so I think you can argue some people either watch or tune in or pay attention to stories like that just because they know it's opposite their politics.
Yeah. Well, you're looking at two people who are like at the beginning of that, and at least I know I feel it'll never be as good as it was then.
Another week, you're calling yourself old.
Yeah.
So I think it's one of those long running type shows where it can fall into any of these three categories.
So, but that begs the question, though, can you break the cycle of hate watching? Or would you even want to break this?
Yes. I think for sure you can break the cycle of hate watching, because we did it.
Yeah.
We stopped watching Blue Bloods around the 5th season. I mean, you can always argue that we hung in there way too long, but you know, considering the show went about 14 seasons, we did pretty good. So yeah, we just made the decisions that we just can't watch this. We just can't watch it anymore. So it can be done. And the same with Equalizer. We didn't watch the most recent season. We might have stopped watching it before then. So can it be done? Yes, absolutely.
Well, yes, it can be done. It can be done. I think it's one way to do it is to, well, acknowledge that you're doing it first, but also for me, I mean, just as I get older, I try to enjoy other people's happiness. I try to just be, let people enjoy what they enjoy and not, I think when you're younger and you're wrapped up in this idea of fandom, you feel like everybody should like all the same things you like. And so as I get older, I just try to enjoy when other people are happy and just be happy for them. And I think that's maybe the best way to get rid of hate watching is to just be like, somebody really likes this and good for them. Good for them. It's entertainment for them. And I also don't think it's a big deal if you watch something and say this is stupid. But understand that you probably like something that's stupid too.
I have to say, prior to really understanding the different categories, I really thought this was a cycle that could be broken, and I was hopeful. But now that I understand that there's a sports component to this, I am on the side of no, it cannot be broken. I'm a Chicago sports man to the core. I will never cheer for LA anything except the Dodgers, rest in peace, Papa, or the New York anythings. You can be the Knicks. Heck, the Nets are in Brooklyn. That's in New York. I ain't cheering for them either. I can't. So no, I'm not as confident that the cycle can be broken. I wouldn't want to. That feels like it would be forfeiting my Chicago roots. So I can't stop hate watching because I gotta hate on those teams that I don't like. Padre, you've been a little silent on this. Is that your way of trying to wave the white flag? No, you can't break the cycle, or do you think it can be done?
I'm not so sure when it comes to sports. I kind of agree with you with a lot of that. Although I do soften up sometimes, as Chris would say, I'm not so vengeful, hateful, disliking of some teams like the Knicks. Sometimes I feel a small bit of pity for them, but Boston, no, not really. Yeah, I don't know. It comes and goes in waves as far as those are concerned. Sometimes I feel a little bit but most times, like you said, the Packers, definitely not. Aaron Rodgers in particular, definitely not.
I think one thing to remember is when we're talking about hate watching, it's all kind of rooted in love in a way. There's always an element of love underneath it somewhere. Brandon, you might hate the SEC teams, you might hate Aaron Rodgers, but you love football and you love the entertainment even that teams you hate can provide, and even players you can't stand. I won't say hate, but you can't stand provide. Mom and Dad, you guys love TV. You love and you love your CBS shows, and I'm sure it's deep down you still love Tom Selleck and Queen Latifah, even if they brought you some misery in those later seasons. Girls, I really enjoyed the HBO show. I enjoyed the idea of that show, and the way it just represented young people and their different perspectives and their different experiences. And so I think whatever you're hate watching, even if you're doing it to needle somebody, you probably love that person. So there's always an element of love in there somewhere.
That's perfect, Chris, and it's funny to say it that way, but I think that's an excellent way to go ahead and wrap this one up. So with that, we're going to wrap up this edition of the Cup of Tea Critiques podcast. Thank you so much for listening and figuring out your cup of tea along with us. Honestly, we could go on and on like we do at our dinner table, but we look forward to you joining us again next week for another great discussion. Make sure you rate and follow the Cup of Tea Critiques podcast wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Also, make sure to leave a comment. Let us know some of the hate watching you've done in your past. You can stay in the loop on all things COTC by subscribing on our website at cupofteacritiques.com. You can also find us on Facebook, check out our Instagram at Cup of Tea Critiques, and on Letterboxd at COT Critiques. For Reba, Terry, and Chris, I'm Brandon. We'll see you next week for another deep look with a deep brew.